Derecho, a hurricane that skips the ocean. Most people picture a hurricane spinning in off the sea. A derecho does the same damage without the spin and without the coast. It is a straight line windstorm born inland that drives in one direction for hundreds of kilometers without weakening. The name is Spanish for straight ahead. A physics professor coined it in 1888 to separate this from a tornado. A tornado twists. A derecho shoves. To qualify, the damaged swath has to run at least 400 kilometers, with gusts over 90 kilometers per hour along most of it. The strong ones reach 200. That is Category 2 hurricane force on dry land, hundreds of kilometers from any sea. In August 2020, one crossed the American Midwest in 14 hours. It flattened 10 million acres of crops, cut power to more than 1 million people, and did $7.5 billion in damage before the afternoon was over. A hurricane needs an ocean. This one needs a bad afternoon. Firenado. Fire does not just spread here, it builds its own weather. A wildfire heats the air above it. The air rockets upward. If the winds line up, the rising column starts to spin, and the fire climbs into its own rotating tower of flame. Most fire whirls are small. This one was not. On July 26, 2018, the Carr Fire in California grew a vortex nearly 1 kilometer wide. It rose 5,500 meters into the sky and spun with the force of an EF3 tornado. Winds around 230 kilometers per hour. Inside, it reached 1,480 degrees Celsius, hot enough to strip bark off trees and wrap steel pipe around power poles. It tore transmission towers out of the ground and killed 4 people. It was only the second true fire tornado ever documented. The first was in Australia 15 years earlier. A normal fire waits for the wind. This one makes its own. Megaflash, a single bolt of lightning longer than most countries. The average lightning strike is under 15 kilometers long. A megaflash is one continuous flash that travels for hundreds. It happens inside enormous storm systems, jumping sideways across the cloud tops instead of straight down. The world record was certified in 2025. A single flash on October 22nd, 2017, stretched 829 kilometers across the sky, from eastern Texas to near Kansas City, 3 states in a little over 7 seconds. If you are enjoying these, the subscribe button is right there. It helps the channel keep hunting down the most extreme events on the planet. A mega flash is also why lightning kills far from the storm. A strike can leap out of a clear looking sky and hit the ground more than 100 kilometers from the rain. Forecasters call it a bolt from the gray. One cloud, one flash, the length of a country. Heat dome. It is not a heat wave, it is a lid. A ridge of high pressure parks over a region and refuses to move. Under it, air sinks. Sinking air compresses, and compression heats it further. The dome traps that heat and cooks everything below like a closed oven. In June 2021, one settled over Western Canada, a place used to mild summers. On June 29th, the village of Lytton hit 49.6 degrees Celsius, the hottest temperature ever recorded in the country, beating the old national record by almost 5 degrees. The next day, Lytton burned to the ground. Across the region, the heat killed more than 600 people. Power grids buckled, roads melted, fruit cooked on the branch. A heat wave passes through, a heat dome sits down, closes the lid, and stays. Bomb Cyclone, a winter storm that turns into a hurricane in a single day. The technical name is bombogenesis. It happens when the central pressure of a storm drops at least 24 millibars in 24 hours. The faster the pressure falls, the harder the storm pulls air inward, and the stronger the winds get. The result looks like a hurricane made of cold, a tight spinning low with a clear center, hurricane force gusts, and a wall of snow instead of rain. These storms explode off coastlines in winter, where cold air over land collides with warm ocean water. That clash is the fuel. In hours, a routine low deepens into a monster that shuts down entire regions. A tropical hurricane takes days to build over warm seas. This one detonates overnight in the middle of winter. Ice storm, rain that turns your whole city into glass. It starts as snow high up. The snow falls through a thin, warm layer and melts into rain. Then it meets the freezing air near the ground and freezes the instant it touches anything. Not on the way down. On impact, every branch, every wire, every road gets a growing shell of clear, solid ice. A single coated power line can carry hundreds of extra kilos of ice. Half an inch of it is enough to drag lines to the ground and snap poles. Heavy enough, and it collapses steel towers. When the grid goes down in an ice storm, it stays down. Crews cannot drive on glass, and the ice keeps forming while they wait. Snow, you shovel. This, you wait out in the dark. Polar vortex collapse. The Arctic escaping its cage. High above the North Pole, a ring of fast, freezing wind spins all winter. That is the polar vortex, and its job is to lock the coldest air on Earth in place at the top of the planet. Sometimes the ring weakens and buckles. When it does, the cage breaks open, and Arctic air pours south into places that were never built for it. In February 2021, a collapse sent that air deep into Texas. Temperatures crashed below what the state's power grid could handle. Pipes burst, the grid failed, millions lost heat for days in the cold, and hundreds of people died. The cold did not come from a storm. It came from the top of the world, spilling out of a broken lid. A vortex that holds the cold in until the day it does not. Haboob, a wall of desert that swallows a city whole. The name comes from the Arabic word for wind. A haboob forms when a thunderstorm collapses and slams a burst of cold air into dry ground. That air scoops up loose sand and drives it forward as a single advancing wall. And it is a wall. A haboob can stand over 1,500 meters tall and stretch more than 100 kilometers wide. From a distance, it looks like the horizon itself is rolling toward you. Inside, visibility drops to zero in seconds. Highways vanish, airports close. The air fills with grit that chokes engines and buries streets. They strike the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and the deserts of Arizona. Same phenomenon, 3 continents. It is not a sandstorm you drive through, it is a coastline of dust coming to shore. Supercell, the single storm that builds every other storm's worst day. Most thunderstorms rise, rain, and die within an hour. A supercell is different. At its core is a deep, rotating updraft called a mesocyclone, and that rotation lets it survive for hours and feed on itself. That engine is what makes it dangerous. It spins up the most violent tornadoes. It grows hail the size of grapefruit, lofted and refrozen until it is heavy enough to punch through a roof. It can drop that hail, spawn a tornado, and dump flooding rain at once from the same cloud. Meteorologists call the biggest ones motherships because that is what they look like on the horizon. One slowly rotating machine, miles wide. Every other storm has a bad moment. A supercell is the bad moment organized. Snowball Earth, the day the entire planet froze. Not part of it, all of it, between 720 and 635 million years ago. In a stretch called the Cryogenian, Earth's climate crossed a line and kept falling. Ice spread from the poles toward the equator, and then it kept going. It runs on a feedback loop. Ice is white, so it reflects sunlight back into space. That cooling makes more ice, which reflects more sunlight, which makes more ice. Once it starts, it runs away. At its worst, the global average may have sat around 12 degrees below freezing. Glaciers reach the tropics. There is glacier-scarred rock formed at the ancient equator that still proves it, and it did not happen once. It happened at least twice. The first freeze lasted around 50 million years. What saved the planet was volcanoes. They kept erupting through the ice for millions of years, pumping out carbon dioxide until the trapped gas overwhelmed the freeze and thawed the world. The most devastating weather event in history was not a storm. It was the whole planet turned into one frozen rock, and it has happened before.